Hi, I'm Gökhan and this is Late Night Stocks. We face hard times, huh? Vaccine stocks keep falling and we got a lot of messages about them. Is the worst yet to come? It is hard to say that, but in this video, I'm gonna evaluate the news about Pfizer's new antiviral pill and its possible effects on the vaccine sales. Is it really a wonder pill and will end the pandemic? After that, as you know, Moderna, Pfizer and Novavax announced their Q3 earnings this week. Moderna missed revenue and EPS expectations, but what are the reasons for that? Pfizer earnings will be a good guidance for BioNTech earnings because we can see the vaccine revenues. Novavax announced more and more good news, but it is time to buy more or say goodbye. We are gonna look at the company numbers to evaluate the situation briefly. Guys, we are on your side and try to share our fact-based analysis. We don't get any money or some benefits from them. If you like this video, please don't forget to give a like and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can also buy us a coffee to support our work. You can find the link in the video description. Pfizer says its experimental pill reduces the risk of hospitalization, death from COVID-19. First of all, congrats to all who developed this treatment. I know it hurts when you lose money, but don't forget some people lose their lives. That's why this is a big step to fight against the virus. Never mind, the treatment is a combination of this pill and an older antiviral drug called ritonavir to people take at home before they get sick enough to go to the hospital. An interim analysis among more than 1,000 people showed an 89% reduction in the risk of hospitalization or death from coronavirus. Not to forget, if patients got it soon enough. Pfizer stopped the trial and plans to apply to FDA for emergency use authorization before Thanksgiving. By the way, the company didn't provide the data about this trial, therefore scientists can discuss or review. This drug is basically designed to stop the virus from multiplying. As you know, some of other companies in the world working on also COVID pills. I analyzed Vaxart and its experimental COVID-19 vaccine previously. According to Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, the 89% efficacy means instead of 10 going to the hospital, only 1 will go and likely very few, if any, will die. It sounds promising, but we need data and a larger sample size. One of the most important paragraphs of this article is this one. Bourla said the pill could save millions of lives, but he still wanted to emphasize the importance of vaccination. But vaccine's efficacy is not 100% and some people are against vaccination. Even if you are fully vaccinated, there is a risk of being sick of COVID-19. This pill is complementary to the vaccines. On the other hand, increases the self-confidence of the vaccine opponents. But is it as cheap as the vaccines? This pill is given in combination of an older antiviral and the treatment consists of 3 pills given twice daily and probably for a week. Taking 6 pills a day may be challenging for those who has stomach problems. The most important point is the pricing. Pfizer expects to price its treatment for high-income countries close to where Merck has priced its drug, which is around $700 for a 5-day course of therapy. It is good to remember that an average vaccine price per dose is between $15 and $20. Even you think that this pill can replace the vaccines, the cost of booster shot is ridiculously cheap in comparison to this pill. I suppose many people will get primary doses when this pill will be authorized. On the other hand, vaccines are primary prevention and replacement is not possible according to people who are familiar with this topic. This article also points out to the importance of broad use of vaccines to end the pandemic. The vaccines are going to be most effective and reliable tool that we have in this pandemic, said Dr. Grace Lee, a professor at Stanford University. It is good to remember that you take this pill when you have symptoms or a positive test. This pill won't prevent infection. I would like to share Mizuho analyst Vamil Divan comments which seem reasonable. He forecast a very minor impact from the company's pill on vaccination among people who do not want to vaccine or a booster shot as recommended by the US health regulators. Not to forget, the US talking about vaccine mandate, not for a recommendation. He added that, "I think there is a small percentage of people that may decide not to get vaccinated now that there are good treatment options. In my opinion, if somebody rejects free and safe prevention from the disease, should undertake the cost of this pricey treatment." On the other hand, Pfizer plans to produce 50 million treatment courses next year. As you see, the volume shows that this cannot compete with the vaccines. There are about 8 billion people in the world, and this amount covers slightly more than 0.6% of them. Not to forget, this treatment is complementary and will be given also to patients who are already vaccinated. Long story short, this is not a good alternative to vaccines. Another question mark is the side effects. It is interesting that 20% of both treatment and placebo patients had adverse events. Very interesting. Is the pandemic will be over anytime soon? This is one of the most important questions for the investors. According to Pfizer board member Gottlieb, this is possible by January in the US. But when we look at the key points, he includes the vaccine requirements from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration beginning on January 4th for any company with at least 100 employees. If that happens, Pfizer BioNTech Q4 revenues will explode because Q4 US deliveries of Moderna are postponed to Q2 2022 by the US government. I think we are beginning of winter and new infections are very unlikely to decrease in upcoming months. What thinks Moderna about pandemic and endemic periods? According to the company, we are in the variant epidemics in which the Delta variant is dominant. Moderna and BioNTech expect to end the pandemic in developed countries by the second half of 2022. It is very hard to predict because the virus is still spreading and new variants will come. Let's continue with Moderna. This week was very disappointing for the investors and the stock price dropped about 40%. On Friday, the volume was about 60 million shares, which shows a panic selling. Are we gonna see old good days anytime soon? In August, the stock price hit $490 and now you have 50% discount. It is better to buy now or to stop loss. On Friday, the RSI index was 41. At least 2 years, maybe all-time low. This means the stock is over and oversold. I would like to show what Deutsche Bank did after its sell rating to Moderna. They increased their position by 50% this quarter and exceed 1 million Moderna shares. They probably bought a lot of shares on Thursday. Big holders increasing their stakes. I also increased my positions on Friday. I'm showing this because I'm honest about my opinions about the vaccine stocks. We can't exactly know the dip, but I have enough money to buy further. When we look at the Q3 numbers, the revenue was $5 billion and net income was $3.3 billion. Their cash is mind-blowing, which was $15 billion end of the quarter. The company expects to deliver fewer doses this year due to logistic and manufacturing difficulties. Moderna updated the revenue expectation and put between $15 and $18 billion for this year. The main reason is US delivery shift to the next year and non-profit vaccine deliveries to low-income countries at non-profit prices. I'm gonna share the details later. Despite $3.3 billion earnings, the company couldn't beat the EPS and was 20% lower than Wall Street expectations. They expected 50% growth quarter over quarter. As you see, the expectations are very high. When we look at the deliveries, we see more deliveries to rest of the world in Q3 and made the deliveries complicated as the company said. Moderna delivered 208 million doses in the last quarter and 199 million in this quarter. The delivered dose increased less than the revenues. This means Moderna sold its jab for higher prices outside of the US. If they can accelerate the manufacturing and delivery process, can generate even more revenues than US sales. The company had $15.3 billion cash at the end of Q3. This is why I really like Moderna. They will stay in the game whatever happens in the stock market. Rising inflation and costs will bring extra burden to unprofitable companies or the companies who has lots of debt. End of this year, Moderna probably will have about $20 billion cash. We see now the summary of this year expectations. Cost of sales is expected to be between 16 and 17%. This makes more than 80% gross profit. This is a huge competitive advantage. When we look at the next year, the company secured $17 billion revenue in contracts with $3 billion in options. Booster market for next year is expected to be $2 billion, so they have a $22 billion revenue potential for 2022. The numbers are good, but why the investors are so scared? Maybe we should look at the Q3 earnings conference call to understand why Moderna failed to beat the estimates. First, Stephen Bancel said that when they announced their African Union partnership, the US decided to delay to Q2 the delivery over December quarter. This caused lower revenues for this year because the volume is going to African Union is at, let's say, non-profit price. Another reason is COVAX. Moderna has quarterly option with this organization. They exercised their Q2 option at the end of Q3. That's why Moderna generated lower revenues. COVAX doesn't have cash, because of that their timing is unpredictable. They have still options and are still unclear when they exercise them. This point is very important. The CEO thinks that on the pandemic and ventilation of the sales over the year, it will be dangerous to assume volume and pricing for the non-profit sales to the COVAX. When we summarize the situation for Moderna, the company doesn't have fundamental problems and delivers the vaccine continuously. The main reason for lower revenues is non-profit vaccine sales and their timing. If the US could exercise its options in this quarter, we could see more revenues. But not to forget, this option is still there and will be delivered in next year. The stock price is below the 200 days moving average and the company has less than a forward PE ratio of 10. I think we can see $400 stock price before the Q1 earnings. I lowered my price target because the company also lowered its revenue expectations for this year by 20%. Let's continue with BioNTech. The stock price behavior was similar like Moderna. On Friday, the volume was about 12 million, more than 3 times of average. Some investors sold their shares at 50% discount and was an opportunity for others. Of course, it's hard to say who has the right, but panic selling is not a good idea. BioNTech will announce its Q3 earnings on 9th November next week. We can maybe predict its earnings from Pfizer revenues because BioNTech doesn't have any other income. Pfizer increased its COVID-19 vaccine sales prediction to $36 billion for this year. This makes about 10% increase from the previous assumption. This is also similar for BioNTech. Pfizer-BioNTech plans to deliver 3 billion doses this year, which is a record for COVID-19 vaccine production so far. The companies can produce up to 4 billion doses next year and 1.7 billion of them in contracts. Pfizer expects $29 billion revenues for next year from direct sales and alliance revenues with BioNTech. They have still 2.3 billion doses capacity and are very likely to produce more than 1.7 billion doses next year. When we look at the Q3 numbers, Pfizer got $13 billion from Comirnaty sales, which exists direct sales and alliance revenues. This number was $7.8 billion last quarter. We see huge increase in revenues, namely more than 60%. When we look at the Q3 highlights again, Pfizer was gained 18% more market share in the US and 10% in the Europe in comparison to April. The early bird catches the worm. This market share will probably gain from non-mRNA vaccine makers because mRNA vaccines are superior to traditional ones. If we have a look at BioNTech Q2 earnings, the company got 4 billion euros from alliance revenues and 1 billion euros from the direct sales. The company earned $12.46 per share and beat the estimates last quarter. Actually, BioNTech beat the Q3 earnings in Q2. As we saw from Pfizer, with more than 60% revenue increase shows that BioNTech will beat the revenue estimates for sure. EPS depends on the profit margin and non-profit sales may change this. I don't think BioNTech will miss the EPS expectations. They also delivered vaccines to high-income countries, especially to Europe. I expect up to $500 stock price before the Q4 earnings. BioNTech can also drive the other vaccine stocks up. Let's see. Let's continue with other little boy, Novavax. The news are good, but got a sell-off like other vaccine stocks. Investors were less willing to sell Novavax because the Pfizer Pill targets mainly developed countries and is still too expensive to compete with mass-produced, well-known technology-based COVID-19 vaccine. Still, the recent sell-off is a good chance to get the shares of stellar companies such as BioNTech and Moderna, as well as the new players like Novavax. When we look at the latest news, Novavax files COVID-19 vaccine for provisional approval in New Zealand. We haven't seen the appropriate reaction from the stock market because of the recent sell-offs. As you know, Novavax announced its earnings on Thursday. The financial numbers are not so important because they don't show the potential of the company. It is better to look at the agreements executed for the COVID-19 vaccine. The company contracted more than 1.6 billion doses so far. In comparison to its size, this number is mind-blowing. Of course, the manufacturing will be mostly done with its partners like Serum Institute in India. They got 179 million revenues related to development activities of its COVID-19 vaccine. The company has a very strong cash position, namely $1.9 billion cash as of Q3. Vaccine stocks are very volatile, and if you want to see a steady increase, maybe you shouldn't invest in these stocks. We may see $350 to $400 stock price in a year, but it is very early to say that now. When the company gets more emergency use authorization and delivers vaccines, can exceed $300. But we have to wait and see that. Thanks for watching till the end. Please do also your own research before investing. Please give a like and don't forget to subscribe. Arrivederci.